Welcome to Dr. Jeffrey Roth's Looking Good and Feeling Great podcast, live from Las Vegas, with his co-host, Darrell Craig Harris.
Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Jeffrey Roth, your board-certified plastic surgeon in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we're about to do it all over again.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a few weeks, and we usually typically do we release a show once every week, so it keeps us pretty busy.
Yes, so it's been a minute. We've been really busy, thankfully, at the office. We were not busy for a while, and that's much worse. So yeah, we'd rather much be busy, and then all of a sudden we had what's that stuff that comes from the sky? Well, rain here in Las Vegas.
Right.
So that was a little bit different as well. So yeah.
We get good rain here once every 3 months.
Something like that.
So
for those of you at home, we get about 4 inches a year, believe it or not, which, my East Coast friends, that would be like Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny when that happens and people forget how to drive and infrastructure goes down. It's weird.
Yeah, it gets crazy. Well, Vegas too. It's such a weekend town in some ways too. Like as we know, like the weekends, it always gets crazy here. Driving here, all that stuff is.
Yes, the degree of difficulty goes up a little bit on the weekends. So you just gotta get your game face on and do that thing. So
one thing that we were talking about, and we've actually gotten a lot of feedback from the audience, is talking about the importance of post-op care, I guess you would say. And we've talked some about that. So would you like to discuss that and how that affects what you do?
That's really, I have to tell you, crucially important. And we were talking about this in the office just the other day. When I used to do hand surgery, I used to put fingers back on. There was a day that I used to do that, and I was trained by the best guys in the world and all that. So I just would emulate what they would do. What would Dr. Bunky do? So we did that. And you can be the best hand surgeon in the world. I am not. There are some guys that are phenomenal. But basically, you can be the best hand surgeon in the world. But if the patient doesn't do the physical rehab, the occupational therapy, it's not going to work. Right. So you can go ahead and try to set the stage for recovery best you can. But it really is a team effort between the patient and the patient's caregiver in some regards,
sure.
And then also us at the office. And then when the rubber hits the road, when you actually make the incision and do the operation, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all of that combined to try to put people in their best spot. And I tell people all the time in the office, I do primarily aesthetic plastic surgery, and the real key for that is setting up their universe so that they would heal well. And we have the luxury of time. It's not a gunshot wound. It's not a cancer operation that you got to move fast on.
And it's elective surgery. And
it's elective surgery. It's got to be safe and effective. And by that, if there is an opportunity for folks, can I get my mother who lives out of town to come and help me? Oh, geez, I got to, put the kids over at grandma's house for 3 or 4 days. You can go ahead and set up your universe so as to best help yourself. People don't realize that lots of these surgeries, they do it on Friday. They think they're back at work on Monday. That's not true. And the body will heal the way the body wants to heal. And I tell most everybody this is a year project we get ourselves into, whether it's breast aug, whether it's facelift, whether it's rhinoplasty. There's certain stages of healing. And for example, typically scars look their most red and most raised at about 4 months.
Right.
Most red and most raised at about 4 months. And I tell them usually they look better at about 10 months to 12 months.
Right. Because that's the thing, because it's people think like I get the plastic surgery done, the procedure done, and then within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, I'm going to be great. It's like it's a long process.
It's a process
for the healing.
Right. And that's just when we hear from dinosaur age, right? You go ahead and you're running after Tyrannosaurus Rex and you twist your ankle and your ankle swells up. Well, we've carried those genes forward. Nowadays, we put ice on it and elevate it, and we actually, if there's a fracture, we can operate on it. But still, there's trauma, there's swelling. And for example, my folks that get tummy tucks, abdominoplasty, they'll get on the scale. I don't know why they do this, but they get on the scale about 3 days later, and they're up 5 or 10 pounds.
Right.
And they're upset. And they said, wait a minute, you did 5 liters of liposuction, and you got the big tummy tuck, and And the answer is yeah, you're holding on to water, and they can't get their rings on their fingers, etc. And I tell most of, the running joke in our office is we tell the husbands and boyfriends to take the scale and hide it in the garage for about a month. And even with the liposuction, we have, a stage 1 compression garment, and usually we switch them out at about 3 to 4 weeks. And people on day 3 are like, oh my God, this is so tight. And again, usually about 4 weeks, are like, oh my gosh, this is loosey-goosey. So then we get a second one on it, which is even tighter. So there are processes that go. Breast dogs, for example, you put them in, everybody looks great on the table. They wake up and they go, way up by their clavicles. They usually stay there for about a month, and then they start moving down at about a month. And one will go faster than the other one. So there'll be one good kid and one not so good kid. That's how that works. Right. But at the end of the day, meaning 10 months to a year, usually everything falls into place where it's supposed to be, et cetera, et cetera. And so we at the office, we try to educate folks best we can. And we try to do that pre-office visit with the website and this podcast, et cetera, et cetera. And then also my staff in the office are terrific educators too. And we do verbally, and we write it out, and we have cartoons on the website. So we really try to make it the best we can. Now, and then everybody's got great stories about patients that didn't really sort of kind of listen, this sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. We were talking about some of those. I know you've got some great ones.
There's some good ones. And many of them are very well intentioned. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So we had one husband who wanted to go ahead and take the sutures out of the patient with a toenail clipper. Big infection. It was really kind of a mess. That's no bueno. My favorite, probably all time story of patients pushing the envelope, we'll say it that way, is we had this gal come in, beautiful girl, Brazilian girl, came in, and she had a hump on her nose, right? So we take her to the operating room, we do the rhinoplasty, comes out great, right? Chef's kiss, it just, terrific home run. And so she comes in on day 3, and it looks good, okay. It comes in on day 7. It looks good. Comes in on day 21, and it's all kind of swollen. And I'm like, what happened? I said, did you fall down? Did you run into a door? Did the boyfriend give you an elbow, rolling over? So this stuff happens. And she said, well, no, doc, I'm a stripper, right? I said, well, yeah, okay. Well, yeah. And she said, no. I'm the girl that crawls up on the top of the pole and swings upside down in circles and circles.
It's hard to give those instructions when you're doing the consultation.
And I said, well, how long ago did you do this? She's like 4 days ago. I said, okay, you can't have your butt here and your nose below you swinging upside down 2 weeks after surgery. Did I put that in my preoperative book? Yes, because I live in Las Vegas.
Right, because we have a unique situation here, because you see a lot of patients that are actually working,
entertainers,
adult entertainers, and all sorts of stuff.
So all sorts of, lots of folks that you see on billboards, et cetera, et cetera. But growing up here, that was kind of normal, in as much as I just remember moms picking up their kids, and there was this one gal, tall, beautiful, and she had the team jacket for the Lido di Paris, right? So she was a showgirl. But but you're picking up a kid, because that's that's when, the way the town was. When growing up, there was a guy next door to us who dealt cards at night, and you knew he worked graveyard, so there was hours of the day that you really just you shouldn't play your music loud, because he's probably sleeping. Yeah. So, and again, growing up in Las Vegas, that sort of thing, you kind of get used to it.
Yeah, it was interesting too, because when I first moved here, which was 1988, I realized I moved from Los Angeles, and all of a sudden, like you said, like you see the showgirls and that kind of thing, but they have regular lives, they have families, kids, like everybody else. So that's actually always an interesting. Bless you. That's an interesting thing about living in Vegas versus maybe some other places.
Oh, 100%. So yeah, and the other thing too is, and it's a double-edged sword, because again, you can go grocery shopping at 4 a.m. here. Exactly. And so you go to the East Coast, for school or whatever, and like, what do you mean the 7-Elevens are open from 7 to 11? So what's this last call thing?
Yeah, exactly.
And then of course, back east to get a party together, or even a barbecue, you have to go to one store to get the beer, another store to get the chips, another store to get the hard liquor if you get that. So the package stores and all that stuff, and forget about Sundays. Here you go to one 7-Eleven, boom, you're done. So again, it's a bit of a culture
and you get used
clash.
to that, and then if you move away, or if you go to some other place and then you can't do those things, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, right. So what do you mean I can't pump gas? At 4 a.m, I'm running low. So yeah.
So talking about Las Vegas, one of the things that some people may not know about you is that you do you work with a lot of the fights in town, not only in town but also sometimes in New York, and which was Top Rank Boxing typically.
Sure. Yep.
And we were talking about there's a lot of talk these days about obviously COVID and the variants and that kind of thing. But we were talking about actually the bubble. A lot of people have heard that term.
Sure.
And over the past year about, this sports team is in the bubble and that kind of thing. And actually Top Rank and ESPN with their boxing has done that really well.
Yes, there's a couple bubbles that have really worked well. UFC, Top Rank, and the NBA, I think, had really good solid bubbles. So what's a bubble? So a couple of things is you have a pandemic going on, right? And you want to provide some entertainment, and you have some contractual obligations, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So what happened was they put on a series of fights at the MGM. And so Top Rank, ESPN, MGM got together, very creative, and UFC did this too. UFC had a bubble, and then they went to their own Fight Island, which is a real, if you want, extreme bubble, if you want. And then the NBA actually had Disney World, which is kind of a nice, big, huge bubble. Yeah. But so the way bubble basically is I'll speak to Top Rank because I know that the best, is basically those folks that are going to fight that week basically get tested into the bubble, right? Mm-hmm. So you go ahead, you get yourself tested, swabbed, you got to wait 20 minutes, et cetera, whatever it was. And then you're sequestered off. Once you get the thumbs up, then you get to go and check into, your room, et cetera. Right. If, you get the red check mark, see ya, and you're not fighting. Okay, so that goes for
it's not only them; it's their team too.
My next sentence was that goes the rest of your team.
Right.
Okay,
which we just experienced.
And I'll get to that in a second. So basically, so there's fighters' floors, and again, you don't want the fighters going to face each other on the same floor. You don't want them running into each other in the elevator. Okay, fine.
Right.
So basically, and there's a floor for officials, and there's a floor for fighters. It was like a big deal, but the MGM and those guys really kind of put it together. And then, and so you get walked up there, et cetera. You get your stuff, and then there are certain routes that you can go, meaning you can go from there to where the food is. Okay, you can go and where the little recreation areas. By that, they have a table tennis set and all that kind of stuff. Right. And then there's a gym there, so these guys can go ahead and train, et cetera, et cetera. And then also a couple other doors, and boom, there's the Grand Garden Arena. So all of that stuff is tested, and everybody there has been tested, and they continue to be tested.
Right.
For example, fighters will come and go, but some of the ESPN guys, the cameramen, that sort of stuff, they were there for 3 months.
Right.
They didn't leave, and they were a little bonkers by the time they were done. But don't blame them. But they were working during the pandemic,
exactly.
So they weren't complaining at all. Mm-hmm. So they're like, "Shit, I'll watch everything on cable TV and
our friend Mark Chinook, who actually we're recording at the Space Studios here in Las Vegas, and Mark, this is part of their charity organization that they set up for Monday's Dark and all that. And Mark actually is an announcer for ESPN and some other things as well. Yep. And he was talking about he was there at times for 3 weeks.
Oh, good Lord, yes. So and then of course dispatches from the front. He would make these funny little movies and dispatches. But he and some of the other Top Rank folks, staff folks, as well as ESPN, they were there for the duration of this thing.
Right.
So, but nobody was allowed in or out, and you really couldn't see your family, this and that, the whole thing. Yeah. So that takes a bit of a toll. But the other thing too is they're really stringent on it. What I mean by that is one of the fighters had one of his corner people. You get a little nutty, and they figured, I'll sneak out of the room and go on the casino floor at 2:00.
Right.
So
because that puts everybody at risk.
They put everybody, and they threw everybody out. So basically, he got thrown out of the hotel. The fight, it was an issue, and so they really took it seriously. But since they did, thankfully, very few people that were in the bubble converted or whatever, and you were able to go ahead and have these contests and fights. Right. And that also goes for the referees. It goes for the Nevada State Athletic Commission folks, and et cetera, et cetera. So now there was like a hybrid bubble towards the end. What I mean by that is there was people that are already in the bubble, et cetera, et cetera. And then they were trying to test it out with some fans. And by fans, they were going to put 200 people, very socially distanced, et cetera, to see how this could work. And so my experience was, and again, this was all new at the time. Now it's getting to be kind of old hat. But we went in, we got nasal swabbed, we waited in this ballroom type of thing for until you got yes or no. You got your wristband, and then you were able to go to the spectators section of the bubble, but without any contact with the fighters or anybody else who's really kind of part of the show.
Right.
So it was that's kind of the hybrid bubble or that sort of thing. And we also talk about pods meaning, and they did this at the Golden Knights games. They did a good job with that, is you'd have a seat of 2, and then a seat of 4, and then a seat of 6. And then there was that point where the recommendations changed, meaning that it was for a while 50% per capacity, 6 feet distance. and then it was 75% capacity, 350. Well, that's a big difference from 50% occupancy to a 75% occupancy to 25% occupancy is what's the actual distance.
I mean, of course, we all dealt with that with, lots of small businesses. And I mean, the thing is, like, not only the fights, but all those companies, I mean, they employ hundreds, thousands of people.
Sure.
So you're trying to stay afloat and you're trying to keep people working and in a safe way, right?
Right. So you want your, the ticket people, or the people selling popcorn and all that kind of stuff too. Now, in the bubbles and the hybrid bubbles, there was none of that. Yeah. And they were doing their contest, and world title belts were exchanged and everything else like that with no fans, which is really sort of eerie.
Well, you have a little bit of that happening right now with the Olympics, which is going on starting this week.
Yes.
Where they're doing a lot of the events with no
fans, and then they're back to that, and again, their bubble is different. If you ask reporters, they have to go through all this gauntlet stuff. If you ask athletes, it's a bit
complicated,
different, a different sort of thing over there. So, but yeah, and of course the entire world, literally everybody's from somewhere else, that week, and so that it's a tremendous challenge.
Let's, along those lines, because we were hearing also a lot of news lately, just to stay, I guess, up to date, is we're hearing a lot about the variants, the COVID variants. Can you speak a little bit about that and tell us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this COVID virus is a real sneaky bastard. Yeah. Smallpox really hasn't really matured or changed or that much in decades. A little bit, not much. And so you get one smallpox and you're usually pretty good, unless they're sending you to Madagascar or something, or in the military where they're sending you to who knows where, and then they give you a ton of vaccine. So, but the Delta variant, and it's, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, right? So there's now epsilon. So that's how they're naming stuff. So this Delta variant, it's a coronavirus like the other coronaviruses, but basically, with a new hat, in as much as it's got different properties. The properties of this particular one is that it's twice as communicable as the other one, which is really kind of scary. So, so if you, and I get, a dozen,
because I know you're getting a lot of those.
A dozen emails a day about this. Is what does that mean? Are vaccinations good against it? Yes, I think it's important to see that. I think we're getting some numbers out of Israel that it covers it, not as well as the original variant.
It's actually, you mentioned Israel because they've been on the forefront of a lot of the research, right?
Oh, absolutely. So they were on the forefront of the mRNA technology. They've been on pharmaceuticals and tech and all that.
It's amazing.
All that sort of stuff. Yeah, a lot of that stuff comes out of Israel. It's kind of like, if you're the American dream, the Israeli dream now lately has been go to the Technion, which is like MIT, right, in Israel. Come up with some sort of software program and sell it to like Intel or Microsoft and cash in. Yeah. Real estate and television.
But it's great that they have that push towards innovation and also the push towards medical, in particular medical.
It's always been intellectual, medical, technological, et cetera, and everybody's there. I mean, Pfizer's there, La Roche-Posay is there. They're all there.
They go where the talent is.
So they've been at the forefront of this, and they're used to stressing the system, meaning that most everybody has served in the military, most everybody has been vaccinated, so they can go ahead and they have everybody's cell phone, so that if they're in a case of emergency, they can ring up the entire country and say,
and they can really,
battle stations.
They can really track one variant and that kind of stuff.
And they can track it, and they can go ahead and say, all right, everybody's getting vaccinated, boom. And that's kind of the way it goes, because they see it as not an existential threat, a real threat to their national security. And so when it falls under that, then everybody kind of steps in line and gets whatever you need to get.
So
done.
with the COVID variant, so basically like it's COVID, but it's obviously a modified version because it morphs and changes, and that new variant is kind of looking for another pathway into your system.
Right. So it'll continue to change, and viruses will do that, and that's why we have. Every year we get a flu shot, and the flu shot is kind of the best guess to what the variants are going to be this particular year, et cetera. I think going forward, and this is Jeffrey's opinion, is we'll probably be looking at a COVID shot very much like a flu shot every year to catch up with some of these variants, et cetera, et cetera. Not needed for your MMR, not needed for your smallpox, because those we got as kids, most of us growing up here in the States got us as kids. And so we're pretty much covered for that. Although There's monkeypox, which is now, kind of coming out and spreading a little bit. So it's really sort of interesting what's going on in the world of infectious disease, that all of a sudden that's becoming front and center again.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because we've talked about that before, but you're a well-known plastic surgeon, but then at first you're a physician, a doctor to begin with, and then plastic surgeon becomes your specialty. But I think that sometimes it's good to remind people that you had emergency room experience, you had those real world, before you specialized in.
Sure. Yeah. So you usually get reminded about 30,000 feet when they think, bing, hey, is there a doctor on the plane?
That was kind of my point.
Oh boy. Yeah. So yeah. And the funny thing about that, I forget where I was, but somebody had a medical emergency in the back of this place, and like 6 doctors show up, and so it's so basic. It's like, dermatology you can excuse, cardiology you can stay, and it's so it was.
Well, it's good to have the options.
It was one of those, and then I don't know if Jack remembers this. It was at the end of a road race. We were doing a road race downtown. Yeah, that's when I was in shape and actually was running and stuff. So, it was a while ago. Anyhow, so we go ahead and we run the 5K or 10K, whatever. And it's in beautiful downtown Las Vegas and all that. And so we're done, and we're having our little water or whatever. And Jack says, "Hey, Jeff, you might want to look at this guy, right?" And so as soon as I go ahead and look at him, he kind of spins around and wham, goes to ground, right? Oh, yeah. So I'm like, uh-oh. So we get over there. There was another a female physician got there 10 seconds before I did. She assessed him, and he no pulse, no breathing, everything else. So she started in on airway. I started chest compressions and such. And just then, Dr. Bowers, who won't remember this, he's actually a well-known. He actually was one of the race sponsors. Actually, is a cardiologist in town. All right, so he wins. So he gets he wins. One, and the internal medicine person would have won if not that. But anyway, and so we're doing our thing, knowing that there is an ambulance nearby, right. And so we called the race organizers. They got the ambulance, and then we got the AED, the automatic electronic defibrillator, right. On him, and those things are the best things since sliced bread. Right. And so because you put them on the patient, they read the electrical activity, they shock him if you have to, and then we loaded him on a bus, and he was off the races. Right. So that that happens too. Right. And the interesting kind of going sideways is the interesting thing is one of the best places in the world to have a heart attack. Is on a casino floor in Las Vegas.
Oh, interesting.
100%. The reason why, now a couple things. A young guy like him that just finished a race, 2 things. Usually it's a clot or an arrhythmia that just goes ahead and gets you, right? So the clot, it goes to the lungs, the heart, or an arrhythmia will put you down. Okay. So, but if you're playing the slots at a strip casino or anywhere in town, first of all, you're on a camera. Okay, so
right. that's they're going to notice if you
very monitored place. Yeah. Most of the security officers now have at least EMT training. And if you go ahead and slump over in your chair, there's usually somebody there within about 30 seconds. Okay, right. So that's number 1. And then 2, if they recognize that, they can go ahead and get electricity on you, usually at about a minute and a half, which is outstanding, right, because
it's something like a heart attack every second.
Every second counts. Yeah. So even if you call 911 and the paramedics showed up, 4 minutes is an excellent response time, right. But 4 minutes is 4 minutes. So, but if they found again and again, and they've used a lot of data from casinos, is how fast is fast? How fast can you put on? The faster the better. And you get electricity on them and get them out of the bad rhythm and stuff. And they have a very, very high revival rate and survival rate. Right. So if you got to be somewhere, being on a casino floor in Las Vegas.
And really even within the last maybe 10 years, because those machines, the defibrillators have become so common. Sure. People are better trained. I think people surviving heart attacks is
So that's much
really
better.
Changed.
And they're everywhere. They're at the airport. I used to go to the ride a lot, cycling. And they have it back of house. Most gyms have them now, et cetera, et cetera. So some people carry them with them in their trunks of the car, sure. And that sort of thing. So, and a plug out if you want to get BCLS certified or that sort of thing, that's always a good thing because you never know when somebody's going to go ahead and crump in front of you. And nowadays, believe it or not, they've made a move to just hands-on CPR where you just do chest compressions and not actually breathe for them, because that always got people weird, as far as mouth-to-mouth sort of thing. If it's standing between you and death, well, they just pump.
You do what you got to do. Right?
Yeah, just pump on your chest, and that's okay. So that's actually become a thing, and even that is helpful. So the whole idea is to keep things circulating.
What are the as a doctor, what are the most common questions that people ask you?
Usually it's, my friend has this question,
exactly.
and then you follow
That's
that, or my Aunt Gertrude, or, you know what I mean? So, or, you'll be somewhere and somebody rolls up a pant leg and says, is this cancer?
Right.
So, if you're at a charity event or something around this thing. Yeah. So you want to be So I have this festering boil that's, you want to see it, Doc? I'm like, well, we're at the movie.
What's been like, with that kind of thing, what's been your sort of approach? Do you have kind of rules that you've always sort of stuck to, or?
So, well, it really depends. Like anything else, it depends on the context, right? Yeah. And so sometimes I'll say, well, look, now, says, well, if it's non-life threatening, and you have time, then you can say, hey, you should see a regular doc, or, oh, by the way, that's a dermatology problem. I know a good, a good guy or a good gal. You should see X, Y, and Z. What does your primary care doc say, et cetera? So, or it just really kind of depends on it. A lot of it's orthopedic. Primary care is about 40% orthopedic, and that's so you get this phone call like, I just fell down a flight of stairs, which I do. So, but the thing too is you can't really brush stuff off. I mean, I've shown up at parties 10 minutes after somebody took a tumble down the stairs, and they have this big egg on their head,
right?
And they're 3-4 drinks in. And they say, I think it's going to be okay. And I'm like, I think you're going to the hospital.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, because, God forbid, they have a bleed in their head and they drop dead.
Right.
So, and it just depends on kind of the mechanism of force and how much force it takes, et cetera, et cetera. And you can kind of get that from the history of kind of what happened.
Right.
And then you make your best judgment. But yeah, we get with those, sort of kind of questions all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a common thing for probably all doctors, I would think. Right. How can people find you online, and if they want to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
We're all over the place. So first, our keystone is the website, which is www.jjrothmd, so jjrothmd.com. And so let us know what you think about the website. We are always updating it. Poor Jack and poor media people. So if you find something, in fact, we're getting more and more stuff on there this weekend. And so that's number one. Social media, we are on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all of that. And we're always really updating that. Thank you, Craig. And
I try.
And putting more and more stuff up there as well. And then, of course, if you're listening with the sound of my voice, our podcasts, which are everywhere, from Apple to Podbean to Spotify to the other eight platforms you have us on, and all of that. So we're and YouTube. I almost forgot the YouTube channel as well. So we're all over. We're as close as the phone, or as close as your desktop. So go ahead and do check us out. And if you have questions, just call us. Very little phone. It's 702 area code 450-0777. And we actually really like questions. And so call. I say this all the time. I would rather you spend 20 minutes with me than 20 hours searching the internet.
Right. And also, if you have topics that you'd like us to cover, let us know on our social media, and we definitely will pay attention to those. Some of the things we've talked about have actually come from
absolutely. So. Lots of good. And yes, we actually do monitor it. It's not a bot or something like that. I guess I'm on the bot, I suppose. but yeah, no, we actually really do take a look at that stuff. So yeah, that's a good way to get to us as well.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds good. Yay.
Yay. Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us. For further information, please visit the podcast website link for Dr. Jeffrey Roth. See you next time.
Get the best skin protection from the ravages of the sun with Dr. Roth's really great sunscreen. Because you and all your loved ones deserve the best. Developed and produced exclusively by Dr. Roth. Really great sunscreen. For more information on looking good, feeling great, go to www.jjrothmd.com and check out the full range of non-surgical products.